Right now, hold 1 teaspoon of table sugar in your mind. Not a bowl, not a dessert. 1 teaspoon, about 4 grams. That is almost the entire mass of glucose circulating in the blood of a 70-kilogram human at one time. The body runs a narrow voltage line, too little current and the brain fails, too much current and the wiring begins to corrode. So when you say you are quitting sugar for 14 days, the body does not hear a moral decision. It hears a change in input signal. The blood does not stop carrying glucose, the cells do not stop burning fuel, the liver does not turn off. What changes is the amplitude of the pulses entering the system. The spikes get smaller. The switches fire less violently. The storage tanks stop being flooded every few hours. The first correction is mechanical. Quitting sugar does not mean quitting carbohydrates. It does not mean removing glucose from the body. That would be incompatible with normal function. It means removing added sugars and free sugars, sugar poured into drinks, hidden in sauces, compressed into cereals, dissolved into sweetened coffee, packed into fruit juice, syrups, candy, pastries, and processed foods where sweetness has been engineered as a delivery system. The World Health Organization recommends keeping free sugars below 10% of total energy intake and suggests going below 5% for additional benefit. The American Heart Association sets a tighter added sugar target, about 25 grams per day for most women and 36 grams per day for most men. Those numbers are small because the bloodstream itself is small. The control system is precise. In the first 24 hours, the change is mostly electrical. A sweet drink or high-sugar snack is absorbed quickly because it arrives with little mechanical resistance. There is no dense fiber matrix slowing the flow. Glucose enters the blood, the pancreas detects the rising voltage, and beta cells release insulin. Insulin is not just a hormone, it is a routing command. It tells muscle and fat cells to move GLUT4 transporters toward the cell membrane, opening gates so glucose can leave the blood. It tells the liver to build glycogen. It tells fat tissue to reduce the release of stored fuel. When added sugar disappears, the same machinery keeps working, but the commands become smaller. The pancreas does not need to shout as often. This is why the first change many people notice is not fat loss, it is fluid shift. The body stores glucose as glycogen, especially in liver and skeletal muscle, and glycogen is stored with water. Exercise physiology papers commonly describe at least 3 grams of water stored with each gram of glycogen. When sugar intake drops, especially if total refined carbohydrate intake drops with it, glycogen turnover changes and some water leaves with it. The scale may move before body fat has meaningfully changed. That early drop is not a miracle. It is hydraulics. A storage polymer releases water from the tank. There is a second hydraulic mechanism running through the kidney. Insulin affects sodium handling. In classic physiology work, Ralph DeFronzo described insulin's direct effect on renal sodium metabolism, showing that insulin can stimulate sodium reabsorption in the kidney. More insulin signal can mean more sodium retention. Less repeated insulin pressure can reduce that signal in some people, especially when the removed foods are also salty processed foods. The body may release water because glycogen is lower, sodium handling is different, and the input stream has changed. This is why day 2 can feel lighter and flatter at the same time. The pump pressure has shifted. The fluid compartment is recalibrating. Then the brain notices the missing pattern. Sugar is not an illegal drug, and the evidence for literal sugar addiction in humans is much weaker than the language on the internet suggests. Margaret Westwater, Paul Fletcher, and Hisham Ziauddin reviewed the human evidence in 2016 and found little support for sugar addiction as a simple substance addiction model. But that does not mean nothing happens. Highly sweet, high-energy foods can train a behavior loop. Taste, reward prediction, dopamine signaling, memory, stress, habit, and convenience can lock together like gears. When the usual sweet input disappears, the loop keeps rotating for a while, without receiving its expected signal. That mismatch is experienced as craving, not weakness, prediction error. By day 3 or 4, the craving is often more about timing than chemistry. The body has learned that a certain hour produces a certain input. Afternoon fatigue equals sweet coffee. Evening stress equals dessert. Work pressure equals a snack. These are not random impulses. They are conditioned circuits. The basal ganglia compress repeated actions into automated sequences, so the cortex does not have to calculate every step. Remove the sugar, and the circuit still fires at the scheduled time. The hand reaches before the conscious mind has finished voting. For several days, the machine sends a command to a device that is no longer installed. At the same time, the liver is receiving a different supply chain. Table sugar, or sucrose, is glucose plus fructose. High fructose corn syrup also delivers glucose, and fructose in free form. Glucose can be used widely across tissues. Fructose is handled largely by the liver. Its first major step uses fructokinase, producing fructose 1-phosphate, and this route bypasses key regulatory checkpoints that normally slow glycolytic flow. When fructose arrives repeatedly in high doses, the liver can push more carbon toward de novo lipogenesis, the construction of new fat, while also altering transcription factors such as GIBP and SREBP1C that regulate metabolic machinery. Remove the repeated fructose load, and the conveyor belt slows, not to zero, to a lower throughput. This is one of the most important parts of the 14-day change, and it is also where honesty matters. 2 weeks does not rebuild a human metabolism from scratch. It does not erase years of insulin resistance. It does not empty a fatty liver in a guaranteed universal way. But short-term sugar restriction can change measurable metabolic signals faster than most people expect. Robert Lustig and colleagues studied 43 children with obesity and metabolic syndrome and used an isocaloric fructose restriction diet, meaning calories were intended to stay similar while sugar was replaced mainly with starch. In about 9 days, several surrogate metabolic markers improved despite the short duration. The study was specific: children, obesity, metabolic syndrome, controlled feeding, and surrogate markers. It was not proof that every adult gets the same result in 14 days. It was proof that the sugar signal can be metabolically active independent of simple calorie arithmetic. Now think about the mouth as a chemical reactor. Sugar does not only enter through the digestive system, it first passes through a biofilm. Dental plaque is a living surface, a microbial film attached to enamel. When sugar arrives frequently, bacteria metabolize it and produce acids. Acid lowers local pH. Enamel is a mineral structure, mostly hydroxyapatite, and acid exposure pushes it toward demineralization. Quitting added sugar for 14 days does not regrow damaged enamel like replacing a broken tile, but it changes the frequency of acid attacks. The mouth gets fewer chemical pulses. The surface spends more time in repair conditions and less time under acid load. This is not beauty advice. It is corrosion control. By the middle of the first week, the intestine is also operating with a different feed mixture. Added sugar is absorbed high in the system and quickly. Whole foods with intact fiber behave differently because the food matrix acts like a flow restrictor. Fiber slows gastric emptying, changes viscosity, feeds microbial fermentation, and alters the rate at which glucose enters circulation. A whole apple and apple juice can contain related sugars, but they are not the same mechanical object. One is a fiber-reinforced structure that must be chewed and dismantled. The other is a liquid sugar delivery system. The pancreas sees the difference because the bloodstream sees the difference. This is why hunger can change in 2 opposite directions during the same 14 days. Some people feel hungrier at first because the quick reward signal has been removed. Others feel steadier because the repeated glucose and insulin swings are smaller. The stomach, liver, pancreas, brainstem, hypothalamus, and adipose tissue are not separate departments. They are coupled sensors in one control loop. Ghrelin rises before expected meals. Leptin reflects longer-term energy storage. Insulin reports incoming fuel. GLP-1 and PYY report nutrients moving through the gut. Remove added sugar and the entire circuit has to update its predictions. The first few days can feel noisy because the old model is still running. By day 7, another measurement may begin to move, but it is not the one people often think about. Hemoglobin A1C will not fully reveal a 14-day change because it reflects average glucose over roughly the previous 3 months. The blood cells carrying that historical record do not reset because you had 1 clean week. A fingerstick glucose reading or continuous glucose monitor can show short-term changes. A1C is a slower gauge. It is an odometer, not a speedometer. Expecting a 2-week sugar break to completely transform A1C is a category error. The instrument is measuring a longer time window, but speedometers matter. If the largest glucose peaks shrink, the endothelial lining of blood vessels receives less repeated chemical stress. If insulin demand drops, beta cells may get longer quiet intervals. If late-night sugar disappears, sleep may become less fragmented for some people, especially if the sugar was paired with caffeine, alcohol, or heavy processed food. The direct evidence for each individual symptom is uneven, but the engineering principle is simple. A system exposed to fewer abrupt input spikes often runs with less oscillation. The body is not becoming pure. It is becoming less frequently perturbed. The taste system begins its own calibration. but not as quickly or as cleanly as popular detox stories claim. Sweet taste is detected in part through T1R2 and T1R3 receptor machinery, and the brain assigns sweetness both intensity and reward value. In 2016, Paul Wise and colleagues published work showing that reducing simple sugar intake could make some sweet foods taste more intense after a longer reduction period. Later evidence has been mixed, and a 2025 randomized trial found that altering sweet food exposure did not clearly change sweet liking across several outcomes. So the honest version is narrower. After 14 days, some people perceive ordinary foods as sweeter, but this is not guaranteed, and liking for sweetness may be more stable than the simple reset your taste buds story suggests. The emotional signal is also not mystical. It is load balancing. When sweet foods have been used as a rapid regulator for stress, the nervous system loses one of its fastest external switches. The sugar was never solving the stressor. It was changing state, taste, reward, attention, blood glucose, memory, and comfort compressed into one input. Remove that input, and the stress circuit may become more visible. Irritability, headaches, fatigue, and cravings are reported by some people reducing sugar, but severe, life-threatening sugar withdrawal is not the normal human pattern. The stronger the previous habit, the louder the prediction error can be. The circuit does not require belief, it requires repetition. Now the deeper mechanism, added sugar is rarely alone. It arrives as a package: refined starch, fat, salt, flavor chemistry, soft texture, low fiber, high energy density, and fast access. When someone says they quit sugar for 14 days, they often remove an entire class of ultra-processed foods by accident. That means the experiment is not perfectly isolated. The body may respond not only to less sucrose or fructose, but also to less snacking, fewer liquid calories, more protein, more fiber, fewer late-night inputs, and lower total energy intake. This is why any honest script must separate mechanism from marketing. Sugar matters. The food system around sugar also matters. By the second week, the liver's job is less frantic if the person has truly removed sweetened drinks and frequent desserts. The liver normally acts like a buffer capacitor, absorbing incoming energy, releasing glucose between meals, converting substrates, regulating lipids, and sending fuel outward. Flood it with repeated fructose-containing sugar, and the buffer has to process more rapid carbon flow. Reduce that flow, and the liver gets more time in a lower load state. In people with high baseline intake, that can improve triglyceride patterns, fasting insulin, and other metabolic signals. In people who already ate little added sugar, the measurable change may be small. The machine cannot unload cargo it was not receiving. By day 10 or 11, the most practical change may be behavioral precision. Labels start looking different. A food that seemed neutral is revealed as sweetened. Yogurt, granola, sauces, bread, dressings, protein bars, flavored drinks, breakfast cereals, and coffee additives become part of the same map. The person is not just resisting dessert, they are detecting hidden current. This matters because modern sugar intake is often not one dramatic event. It is leakage. A few grams at breakfast, a few in a drink, a few in sauce, a few in a snack. Small inputs repeated often become a large daily waveform. 14 days, the body has not become new. It has changed operating conditions. The insulin pulses may be smaller. The kidney may be retaining less sodium under insulin pressure. Glycogen and water may have shifted. The liver may be processing less fructose. The mouth may be under fewer acid attacks. The reward system may have begun weakening old cue loops. The taste system may or may not have recalibrated. Hunger may feel steadier, or it may still be negotiating with habit. None of this requires a detox story. The liver and kidneys were already detoxifying. What changed was not the existence of cleansing. What changed was the load placed on the filters. The evidence calibration is simple. Strong evidence supports limiting added and free sugars for long-term health. Strong guidance exists from major health organizations. Mechanistic evidence supports the glucose insulin, glycogen water, fructose liver, and dental acid pathways. Short-term intervention evidence shows that metabolic markers can move quickly in some high-risk groups, but it does not prove that every person gets dramatic results in exactly 14 days. Human sugar addiction claims are weaker than animal, and internet language often implies. Taste recalibration is plausible for some people, but not universal. The physics is real. The promises must stay smaller than the data. So return to the teaspoon, 4 grams. A small white crystal pile, almost nothing in the hand, the same mass as the glucose moving through the blood at one moment in a 70-kilogram body. The difference is timing. 1 teaspoon dissolved into a drink can arrive fast. 10 teaspoons across a day become a repeated signal. 14 days without that signal does not make the body pure. It makes the waveform quieter. The pumps still pump. The sensors still sense. The liver still buffers. The brain still predicts. But the system is no longer being struck by the same sweet hammer, again and again. The body does not need drama to change. It only needs a different input.